Hey guys, welcome back to RHR Jen. I'm so glad you're here. Today I'm joined by this guy. Just kidding. I'm joined by John
Where?
Witherspoon.
That guy?
That guy. That's right. The guy that accidentally dressed like me. John, I got to talk to the olive elephant in the room here. Never in the history of the channel have I worn olive. I decided I'll change it up. Catherine wore olive not long ago. It's a nice color. I'll wear olive. And then what do you do? Yours is more of a beige, though, if I may say
Oh,
so.
don't even start that. Don't even start that. But I did wear it. I will have you know, I did wear it in honor of a certain person.
Okay. I was going to ask. So you and I share an affinity for Ralph Lauren. Is that Ralph Lauren?
I know you won't believe me if I just tell you, but
Never.
there it is.
Ew. Okay. And is that in honor of Meghan?
Of course it is. Of course. And look, the other thing is, I have a little more.
Yeah, you showed a little more.
I don't. The circumference of my arm is a little bit too big, but I did try my best to get the sleeves up, because apparently that's the thing now.
Kind of like.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. So, John, this is a very professional operation I'm running here. I wouldn't normally ask this, but if you were to stand up, would we see something like this going on?
You would not, because in their infinite wisdom, Levi Strauss and Company does not make their blue jeans with the crotch down 6 inches or more from wherever it is. Yeah.
Well, that's their loss. I believe you just taught me a term recently, a palazzo pants. Is that what
That's correct? Now? Yes, those are called palazzo pants, and they were a thing back in the 60s and 70s. And apparently they were sort of popular. They were the last gasp of the bell-bottom pants, the big wide flared pants movement. But apparently somebody thinks that they deserve to make a comeback. I don't know what the popularity of that idea is going to be, but oh well.
That's right.
Oh well. But by the way, I also wore, again, in honor of Meghan, this is
look at you.
Yes.
Purple,
yes.
Right? Care to explain?
It's yes, Purple Label. Ralph. We're on a first name basis. Ralph has there's actually, it's like anything else in marketing. You've got different gradations, and the lowest level of the house of Ralph is Lauren. Like you see it at, Marshalls or TJ Maxx. It says Lauren by Ralph Lauren or whatever it says, but that's the lowest, the least stylish. Apparently the least. No, I'm serious. It's like
you're saying that's what I often wear. So thanks for that.
Well, come on. I guess it sort of goes without saying, but no. The Lauren is like the lowest level, and then there's Polo, and then there's Ralph Lauren Black Label, and then Purple Label is the top echelon of, and I believe that Meghan's outfit is a Purple Label outfit, which I would hope it is for what it apparently cost.
Oh, but,
I can't imagine. Yeah, well, the streets of New York are cleaner today than they have been for quite some time, thanks to Meghan walk. And I have to just say too, she's walking on her pants.
She is walking on her pants, and
she's walking. She is stepping on her own pants. I don't care about how. That's got to be like a safety hazard. Seriously.
One would.
Why would you do that? I don't understand it. But anyway, she has her sense of style, and look, I don't begrudge anybody their own sense of style. It's just, I don't think it's
for me. Yes.
Well, What if you were on an airplane in those pants and they told you to everybody run and go down the big blow up slide, the chute? I would think that would be an impediment to. I hope she didn't wear them on the plane. That's all I can say.
Well, the good news is if there was some sort of fault on the plane and she needed to jump, she's got parachute, so she's good.
That's an outstanding point. It's
a
I give you
safety
great.
measure.
You're way ahead of me. So you and Meghan are both way ahead of me.
I was very thrilled to have a compliment from you, but now that you've compared me to Meghan, you just knocked me back down. So thanks for that.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a whole lot to add to what has already been said about Meghan and her wardrobe choices. For all of his faults, I will say, since you've got a picture up there of Harry, for all of his faults, Harry always has a well-tailored suit on, and his shoes are always very well polished. And I give him credit for that. Whether he polishes them himself or whether he has somebody to do it for him, that's a whole different story. But I will give Harry credit for always looking appropriately attired in a suit.
For the most part, there's one glaring exception that I must point out, and that is coronation. When it mattered most, or one of the times it mattered most to look nice, he looked like he slept in his suit. That was wild. He was actually sponsored for that thing by Dior, and that sticks out of me. Yeah, one of the worst things I've ever seen. That was a rumpled mess. That was very, to me, petulant. My dad, he's not included, whatever, so he's like, I'm just going to wear a wrinkled suit.
Interesting.
Yeah. But before we dive in, I do want to share, I meant to pop it on screen, but I can show everybody. Can you explain that to everybody?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I opened Instagram this morning, and the first item that was in my feed was from, I forget if it was from Lean Mean Machine or Duchess of Sussex or one of those people. And it was a picture of Meghan looking not her best in that outfit from New York. And right below it, I get this ad. And I thought at first, I was like, oh, this is another one. They're giving me two in a row of somebody making fun of Meghan. But no, it was actually a sponsored entry in my feed. And it was what you just showed that said, wrinkled suit, embarrassing. Buy this little piece of luggage or whatever it is, and you won't have these problems anymore. And it took me, I really had to go back 2 or 3 times, and I was like, this has got to be a joke. This is a plant. And I thought, oh my goodness, the whole universe is dumping vibes and karma, and you can't make these things up. The internet, the mysterious mythical forces that run the internet are even calling out Meghan. But anyway, yeah, that made me laugh. Yeah, especially, like I said, it was the first thing was the ad itself, and then the thing that really made me laugh was the fact that I had to go back 3 times and say, who's the author of this? Is this Lean Mean Machine that I've gotten 2 in a row or whatever? It's like, no, this is a sponsored ad. Unbelievable.
That's right. Oh my goodness. Well, John, you and I have been talking for the last couple of days about just all the nonsense that they've been up to. One of the things, we just had some talking points, and one of the things I'd really like to discuss with you is, so much. I don't even know where to start. My first thought is you have actually gotten me into this Blue Origin, and
oh yeah,
that whole space situation. So if you don't mind, I'll start wherever you want, but I thought I'd like to kind of talk about that because you had some interesting points about how it relates back to Meghan and her attitude about it all. So if you want, we could start there and kind of talk about that and and continue on this nonsense that they've been up to, because you have a lot of I hate to pay you a compliment, but you've had a lot of really good thoughts about this. So I thought I could get your take on a lot of this.
Oh,
stuff.
thank you. Thank you. Well, compliment accepted. I'll let me, soon as we finish, I'll put that on my calendar on my phone and mark it as this day, every year, I will have pop up.
Once a
Jen
year,
gave John a compliment.
Once a year, you can expect something nice from me. Other than that,
Thank you.
All
well,
right.
Yeah, the Blue Origin thing, I'm sure there are people scratching their heads saying, why in the world are you talking about this? The answer is, I have been stunned reading through the comments on the stories, and more like the ridicule that has been thrown toward Blue Origin. Mm-hmm. And invariably, there are large numbers of comments with large numbers of likes that say, why wasn't Meghan included? Or Meghan must have blown a gasket when she was not invited to participate in this. Yeah. And I just found that really interesting, that there are so many people who look at the ridiculousness of this space ride, or however you want to characterize it, and there's been all kinds of dialogue about that. But when people talk about this, and they talk about the dumb comments that were made, the silly cheering, it's like an eighth grade. They had an eighth grade slumber party up in space, or on the edge of space, for however long they were up there, and they took flower. Katy Perry took a little flower, and they had little plushies that they took along, and just all of this incredible stuff that seemed so ridiculous. And again, people tied it right back to Meghan. I found that really, really interesting.
You got me completely interested in it. Yes, please.
Well, that's all I wanted to convey, and I was just fascinated by that, because so many people just immediately went right for, where's Meghan Markle in this?
Yeah, so to me, there's so many comparisons and so many crossovers to Meghan Markle, so I understand why they're doing that. The biggest one for me is the post-flight word salad we were getting, especially Katy Perry. It seemed to be. We got words such as feminine, divine, taking up space, again at the a la Meghan, and the jam is my jam, like.
Right.
Yeah, it's a bunch of gibberish, and I was saying to you, I feel like it's just setting women backwards. This is not helping. This is not helping my cause at all.
It's embarrassing, and I had a very interesting conversation. I was invited to someone's home for Easter, which I greatly appreciated, and there were some 21, 22-year-old women there, still in college, still trying to figure the world out, as you do when you're that age. And the topic of the Blue Origin thing came up. And I asked this one young woman who was there, who I've had other conversations with her, and she is as you would expect, she has all of the feelings and attitudes and ideas about what her place in the world is, and she's very bright and very thoughtful, but she's, again, she's in college, and she's thinking about her gender and or sex. I can't ever keep straight which is the right word to use. But anyway, her comment was, it was an embarrassment.
Yeah.
It was insulting to women. Mm-hmm. This is a young woman who has designs on going to law school. She took Latin in high school, and she's no dummy. Sure. And there were other people there, other women of that age in the group, and they all chimed right in and said, this was just insulting to anybody who is in any way thoughtful. And, and then the topic of William Shatner. William Shatner was on one of those trips, and he basically just said, I'm kind of speechless. He made some very profound quotes about, you realize how beautiful the planet is and all the problems that we have in terms of pollution and climate change and all that stuff. There's a Grateful Dead song that escapes me at the moment, but there's a line in the song that says something about the Earth is a beautiful place from space. A closer look reveals the human race.
Oh, yeah.
And that's kind of the sentiment that William Shatner and other people have had. And I will tell you, just as an aside, I've had the tremendous good fortune. Actually, it was one of the times I was in Africa to get in a hot air balloon up above the savannah and see, the giraffes and the lions and the this and the that from, way up in the air in total silence, riding with the wind. And it is an otherworldly type of experience in the same way that going up in the Blue Origin spaceship is an otherworldly experience. But again, to get back to the point, it's like, how can you diminish this with all this nonsense and this, these very shallow comments? And that's one thing that really caught my attention as well. I have heard the word shallow applied to Meghan several times recently, in the context of her podcast, the Lemonada podcast, and also in the comments just within the last day or so about her Time 100 conversation that she had. People have repeatedly used the word shallow, and it's interesting because I think on a certain level she is an intelligent woman. She's obviously very driven. She has passions about things, some of which involve herself, some of which involve other things. But she's not dumb, and yet she seems to come across as dumb a lot of the time. And that's fascinating as well.
Right.
And I had a conversation with somebody the other day, happened to be another attorney who's vaguely familiar with Meghan and Harry. And the conversation revolved around, and this is not an uncommon conversation for lawyers, by the way, but the conversation revolved around what the decision-making process would be if you were involved in litigation of some sort and you had to make a decision about whether to put Meghan on the witness stand. And a lot of this, again, this is a common conversation that people have. Sometimes it's inevitable, but you have to think about what's the impression that this person is going to give to the jury or to the judge. And let's say it's a televised affair, like the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial was. What is this person going to look like on television? Are they going to permanently damage their reputation if they're asked some very difficult questions? And as we know, if you go back and look at the Amber Heard trial or the Johnny Depp trial, if you look at the Amber Heard testimony, or in particular, if you look at the Amber Heard deposition, she looked absolutely horrible and as unlikable as could possibly be. And this other attorney was saying, well, yeah, I think there would be a similar concern about if Meghan started answering questions and she got into this word salad and looked smug, as she often does, and smiled inappropriately or with a lack of authenticity, as she often does, that could potentially be a real problem for her. And if that's one of the really interesting things, incidentally, about the whole Samantha Markle affair, my personal view of the Samantha Markle litigation is that it's going to be an uphill climb up a steep hill. I am not confident in Samantha Markle's chances against Meghan. However, all she really has to do, and this may be all she's after, all Samantha has to do is get to a stage where she's able to depose Meghan, and then we'll really have something compelling to talk about. And we're getting close to the time. It's been several months, and I just looked at the docket the other day. There's no new entry, but if the judge says, yeah, you don't have all the judge has to say is you have some chance of succeeding with this.
Mm-hmm.
And they invariably tilt those decisions in the favor of the person who could potentially be the most harmed, if that makes sense. So if the judge has to make a decision about go or no go on the Samantha Markle case, it's going to be a decision. If it's a toss-up, he's going to give the decision to Samantha Markle. The judge is not going to want to foreclose an opportunity for Samantha Markle to get justice if in fact it's deserved. And it really has to be a complete no way, no how, this is never going to work for the judge to deny that victory to Samantha Markle. So that'll be really something worth keeping an eye out for.
It will be. We'll definitely have you back to discuss that.
And you know, Jen, you could that it's going to be, if it goes, it's going to be in Florida, so you could just pop over there and.
Perfect.
Right.
I'll be there. That's great. Samantha Markle blocked me a long time ago because I was interviewing her brother, and he called her a little shit on my show, and so she blocked me. I was like,
she blocked you. Okay. All right.
I was like, okay. I might have giggled, but I was just like, whoa. Anyway.
Speaking of that, and
did you want me to call you a little shit?
No, thank you. Appreciate the offer, though. I've talked in the past about Royal Grift. YouTube is a funny place. There's clickbait on YouTube. There's conspiracy theories, all of the above, as everybody knows. However, Royal Grift, at a minimum, I'll say this for her channel, she puts out some very interesting content that is very, very compelling food for thought. She just dropped a video in the last day or so about, it's something about they almost got away with it or something. Apparently there are other Markles out there. And there's I couldn't keep track of it. It was very down a rabbit hole, but she's talking about, apparently there's another, I think it's Samantha's daughter somehow. And I think she's 4 years younger than Meghan. And apparently they were very.
That was Ashley. She was on the Netflix show. Yes.
Yes.
She's an attorney, I believe. Or that's
correct. And she's and she's apparently in Virginia. And there was some, like I said, I couldn't follow it, but there was some dialogue about, apparently she and Meghan used to be best friends, BFFs. And then they had a falling out. Ashley was not invited to the wedding, I don't believe. But there's a whole other component to the backstory that goes above and beyond the Netflix that is really, really interesting. And I just encourage people, if you're, I thought it was, as I said, I don't believe everything that Royal Grift has to say, but I find it very interesting. And I think that's, I mean, I look at a lot of YouTubers that way. Look at a lot of YouTubers.
Present company included. You don't believe most of what I have to say, but you know, I'm all right.
Hey, look, I'm not gonna. You can paint yourself into a corner if you want.
That's where I live. It's fine.
Yeah. So anyway, you were saying.
No, I think everything you're saying is spot on. Going back to there's your spot on. Going back to Blue Origin, the only other point I wanted to make is I have my notes down here, so that's what I was looking at. I was saying both cases exemplify marketplace feminism. It's empowerment commodified, if you will. It's like it's for profit or prestige. In both cases, it's exploiting feminism buzzwords like representation and empowerment and voice and stuff. And to me, it's all about, they're trying to mask like self-interest. And they, by doing this, they're alienating their audiences. That's the big crossover there. So.
Absolutely. And you know what it really boils down to, another way of characterizing it would be to say, you know, it's identity politics.
Yes.
Oh, we have, you know, this is the first time we have 6 women. Okay, well, I've made this point before. I have had the good fortune of being around some very exceptional people, both men and women. And one thing I will say, again, this applies both ways, but in particular as applies to women, the exceptional women that I know and have known could not care less about reminding you that they're women.
Mm-hmm. And
that's one thing Meghan seems to be doing. And we were going to talk, I know it's probably on your list as well, about who is the audience that Meghan is really going toward and really trying to appeal to on her podcast. But the exceptional women that I know never remind you that they're women.
Right.
They are just, I mean, somebody said the other day, you know, there are all these slogans about, oh, diversity is our strength. And this person said, diversity is not our strength. Diversity is a nice thing to have. Excellence is our strength.
That's good.
And if you are an exceptional person, people feel that vibe. Mm-hmm. If you are trying to purport to be an exceptional person, people feel that vibe very much as well. And that's what got the Blue Origin people, the crew, passengers, riders, whatever you want to call it, that's what got them in trouble. And I think, you know, it's not something that people need formal training to understand. It's kind of like, you know, we've talked before about, you know, a little kid either likes you or they don't. A dog either likes you or they don't. And people that you meet, within the first couple of milliseconds, you have a vibe from that person that says, this is a person I'm impressed with and that I can form a connection to, or there's a plasticity, there's a fakeness, there's a facade, there's a mask. Everybody talks about the mask slipping and so forth. There's that as well. And that gets back to the point that I was making about putting a person like Amber Heard or Meghan in front of a jury. You'd have to be extremely careful because, and my dad, who's an attorney, used to say this all the time, juries can smell people out within a relatively short amount of time, and they don't have to be exceptionally bright. They don't have to be worldly. They don't have to be anything. It's just, do I like this person, or does this person give me, do my antenna go up a little bit? And I think that's the central theme of all of this that we're talking about.
I think you're exactly right. I think so too. Now, switching gears, something else that you had said I thought was so interesting, and I just wanted to talk about for a second is you'd brought up just an interesting theory, which was the person who talks the most. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, you know, it's so funny.
Goes in with this, yeah.
Yeah, in my high school yearbooks, every year they had what they called the senior survey, and it was all the usual thing. It's not unique to my high school, but it's all the usual questions that you see there. You know, most likely to succeed, most likely to you know, end up surfing in Costa Rica for the rest of his life, or, you know, all of that stuff. But one of them is talks most, says least. And one of them is also talks least, says most. Surprise, surprise. Uh-huh. And again, when you listen to Meghan talk, and to a certain extent, when you listen to Harry talk, you hear all of these words, but you think, what's the takeaway here? How do what have I just listened to? What am I supposed to think about that I've just heard?
Yeah.
And I think, again, I think I've mentioned this before, but one of the real frustrations with Harry, I think, I mentioned his, you know, he always looks sharp in his suit and his shoes are well polished, and he's always well groomed and all of that stuff. And he has his, you know, what I call his, I don't know, I'm sure somebody will put it in the comments, the specific accent that Harry has. He has a very sophisticated posh British accent. Yeah. Yes, very posh, very sophisticated accent. And you expect that what he's going to say, what comes out of his mouth, is going to be on the level of his nice attire, his nice appearance, and his fancy accent, his British accent. and I'm not trying to ridicule. I say fancy. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. It's very pleasant to listen to, and it sounds very sophisticated. But the point I'm making is that you put all of that together, and then all of a sudden he says something, and you think to yourself, well, wait a minute. I'm expecting to hear Shakespeare come out of this guy's mouth, and yet it's a letdown, and it's actually genuinely frustrating. I used to work for a guy who had a fancy posh accent like Harry does and like the King does. And he had gone to Cambridge, and he was an incredibly, which is, Oxford, Cambridge, for people who people might not have. I think people have heard of Oxford, may not have heard of Cambridge. Cambridge is like, it's the Harvard or Yale or whatever of the UK. Very, very prestigious. And this was actually in a consulting capacity. And if we had a difficult client that we were trying to convince of the value of our work, we would trot Richard out and put him on the telephone with the guy or with the client, or send him to a meeting with the person, because everybody just walked out saying, this is brilliant. And it was because, he had a nice appearance, good looking guy, well-groomed, nice accent. And when he talked, even though he was really, really bright, he didn't need all those sort of secondary characteristics. But when he talked, everybody just thought, this just blows me away. This is, again, this is like Shakespeare that we're listening to, or Einstein, or whoever you want. Sure. Anyway, that's, I think, a very frustrating thing about Harry, is that you listen to the guy, and when he's done talking, you just think, what happened?
Yeah.
What just happened?
Yeah.
So
can you imagine those two trying to have a conversation with each other? I mean, just platitude and what?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've said before, I think they're both, I think they both have talents that are latent. We have not seen, they're in there somewhere, but they have not risen to the surface. I think that's a generous way to characterize both of them. Meghan is obviously
yeah.
You think I'm what?
I think you're being kind.
Well,
at 40 something, you don't know what your talents are.
Well, I mean, Harry in particular, I think they both are from I think they are both from suboptimally complicated backgrounds. If that makes sense.
It does.
They did not have an experience like one would have hoped that they had growing up. Meghan, without her mother around for however many years it was, and for whatever reason, and I know I don't need to remind everybody about the complications that she has now in her life as far as her extended family is concerned. Harry, the same thing with his mother. Even had his mother not lost her life, I think he still would probably have been a very, very complicated and compromised man, because all you have to do is look at the way that Meghan and Harry spend so much time away from their parents, from their children. You think about, okay, you project that out. What are Harry and Meghan's children going to be like when they're 35 or 40 years old? And are they going to go back and say, gee, my parents were a lot more absent than they might have been, and we were being raised by Doria, or we were being raised by a nanny or 3 nannies, or whatever the situation is out there. It's a shame that Harry, as much as he talks about his own difficulties in his formative years, it's a shame that he doesn't turn that around and say, well, gosh, I don't want my kids to be that way. Maybe he has. I'm not convinced that he's living it, though. If he has made that connection, I'm not convinced that he and Meghan are
Well,
aware.
In the book Spare, he calls himself an absentee parent. But then you'd think, the actions are not showing that he's internalized this dialogue. He just says it. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep, I agree. But John, we're missing a key to bring it back to New York. She just gave a speech where she talked about she's going to have to go because Archie's about to lose his first tooth. It's like, okay, but you're there giving a speech away from your kids about getting back to your kids. I think the hollow words. Yeah.
Well, it's the hollowness. It's the unrecognized hypocrisy of a comment like that. If it's that important, then what the hell are you doing here?
Exactly.
You jumped on an airplane. You're 3,000 miles and 3 time zones away from your children, and yet you're talking about how important it is for you to be there with them. Hello. Again, there's a good example of why a lawyer would be nervous to have Meghan on the witness stand.
I'm sure.
And we saw that with Amber Heard making comments like that. And, Ben Chew's like, can't believe it. Worst possible thing she could have said. She blurted it out anyway.
It's fun to watch.
That's what I think lawyers would fear about Meghan in litigation.
I would think so too. Well, some of my favorite moments are when Harry gets to talking in court. I can only imagine his lawyers are like, "Shut up, Harry! Shut up, Harry!"
Well, you saw that. I mean, that came out when he, I don't recall exactly what it was, but somebody asked him about, well, what evidence do you have of this thing you're complaining about? Well, I don't have any, but I'm here. I'm telling you. Yeah, my heart tells me, or whatever it was that he said.
Yeah.
And it's just unfortunate. It really is. I think there is such an enormous. This is another thing. Just to go back to the Blue Origin thing, just very briefly, there is such an enormous deficit in the world right now of critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that was very apparent in the Blue Origin comments that came out from the 6 women. There's a critical thinking deficit, in my opinion. By the way, everything I'm saying is my opinion, obviously, and I'm not giving legal advice, and I'm not stating anything as fact. This is all my opinion, and everything I say is allegedly, and everybody gets it. But Harry is that same way. He lacks critical thinking skills. Some people talk about it in terms of playing chess versus checkers. But when Harry makes, I can imagine when Harry made that comment about, apparently, reportedly what he said, I'm here. That's why. I bet his lawyer wanted to get under the table and take a nap. Or dig a hole and get in it. Like, oh.
Yeah. His lawyer is Shelbourne, and I bet he is probably celebrating to the bank. Cool. We're
well, sure. Yeah. Well, you do the best. You do the best you can, in spite of whatever flaws your client might have. That's the bedrock of the legal system, is that you're entitled to good representation, zealous advocacy, as they call it in the United States, and I think it would be very frustrating to have someone like Harry as a client or Meghan as a client. It would be frustrating in the same way that it would be frustrating to work for them.
Oh, yeah.
Ultimately, a lawyer is required to abide by the wishes of the client. You can make all the suggestions and all the, please don't do this and everything, but if the client insists, you got to do it.
Well,
I think it would be very frustrating.
I'm glad you're bringing this up, because I'm looking to hire you as my attorney, because I'd like to sue Meghan because of eye strain from rolling my eyes so hard at the things she's been wearing lately. So maybe you could advise me, offline about that.
Well, you need a Florida lawyer for that, I'm afraid. And that does not include me.
Oh. All right, fine. Jeez. I think I have a pretty good case. I've had to look at hundreds of hours of footage and pictures and everything else, and I'm just getting eye strain from rolling my eyes so hard at the antics of both of them.
Can I just make one comment on that in all seriousness on that
Yes,
regard?
please.
In that regard, I've talked to some people. It's the whole Meghan and Harry situation is so fascinating because I have talked to a lot of people that when you say Meghan Markle, you remember the Family Feud, the thing when they asked about, I forget what the question was, but
Surveyed, yeah.
yeah, but I can't remember exactly what the question was, but something about Prince Harry.
Okay.
What do you know about Prince Harry? Well, he's married to Meghan Markle. Okay, fine. I talk to huge numbers of people who have no idea who Meghan Markle is,
Okay.
or they have a very limited. If they'll say something very cautious, like, "Well, is she the one that's married to Prince Harry?"
Mhm.
So and I realize this is mind blowing for some people who in the Megxit watchers, Megxit YouTube watchers, but there are also people who are aware of Meghan and their impression is very negative. Hence what you see on the Ranker survey. And I believe I saw a video the other day that said 3 years running now, Meghan is the most disliked person on planet Earth, according to Ranker.com. And it's also interesting. I forget who some of the other people are. The top 5 or top 10 people on there. You can, just go to Ranker.com and take a look for yourself. Mm-hmm. And then there are people who watch Meghan or Meghan and Harry content religiously. Mm-hmm. And I think that's unhealthy. I really do. And I'm not trying to degrade your audience or drive, or put your analytics in the tank or anything, Jen. But
you're team Meghan, aren't you? You're doing this for Meghan.
Yeah, I admit it. No, I think it's unhealthy to obsess over Meghan and Harry. Sure. In the grand scheme, and this is easy for me to say in Washington, D.C., with all the stuff that we have going on and all the things that are going on in the world. But I think it's really important to take your Meghan and Harry content in measured doses. Because if you don't, it will literally keep you up at night. And there are times when YouTube feeds me a lot of Meghan and Harry content, and I click not interested, because at a certain point it becomes unhealthy, and you can't really think clearly about them. It's very easy for people to get angry about Meghan and Harry, and I don't think that's good for your psyche or your mental health. Again, that's just my opinion.
Luckily, I have a second channel, so that way people can check that out if they want to see other content. So we're good.
Very good point. Very good point.
In case you get Harry and Meghan burnout. But you're leading me into another thought, though. You'd actually made a really good point about Harry specifically and how he's lost everything that was endearing about him. Do you care to elaborate on that?
Well, I think it's true, and I think it's so unfortunate, and people sometimes misunderstand, I think, when I say that I think Harry is a tragic figure. And I always have to say this carefully, because people in the comments I've read have called me out on this, and they say, "Oh, you're a Harry sympathizer." I'm not. No. I'm not. He's made his bed, and he's having to deal with the consequences. And I think the thing that is, if I had to guess, I really am reluctant to get inside other people's heads, because I think it's dangerous. And also, you can get it really wrong and mess yourself up. But if I had to guess about the things that Harry wakes up and thinks about, what is it that wakes him up in the middle of the night? I think it's, what in the world have I done? Okay. I am in a situation where, and I'm just going to speculate here. Sure. Obviously speculating, but I'm not the only one speculating about this. I think he's in an unhappy marriage. Mm-hmm. I think he misses his country. I think in his heart of hearts, he misses his brother. He misses his dad. Who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? These are the people that are most important in the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a relationship with your one remaining parent who is in declining health or is in troubled, he's not in perfect health. Let's put it that way. I'm talking about the king.
Mm-hmm.
His sister-in-law, the future queen, has had serious health problems. He has children. His children have never met for any extended basis. They have no relationship with their cousins. They have no concept of the country that their father came from.
Mm-hmm.
Why does dad? I bet on some level, if it hasn't already happened, there'll be a conversation in that house in Montecito when those children ask Harry, "Daddy, why do you talk strangely?"
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine? How are you going to answer that question if you're Harry? Well, I couldn't stand the heat in my own country
Mm-hmm.
where I developed this accent. So now I'm here in California, whatever it is, 8 time zones away, 3 in the US, and then 5 more hours from the East Coast to London. I'm 8 time zones away from where I came from. Oh, really? Well, why are you here? What are you doing? What's the answer to that? That's a really, really hard question. And that's that's one of those sort of universal questions that, like I said, it probably keeps him up at night,
Mm-hmm.
getting a question like that. Or why doesn't mommy have that accent? Why doesn't mommy talk the way that you do?
Mm-hmm.
Those are really, as little kids do. They ask a lot of questions. Like, little kids don't have a filter. They ask questions like that.
Yes.
And why haven't I ever met grandpa?
And why aren't you people ever around to take care of us?
Well, that comes later. That comes later. Wait till they become teenagers.
Yeah, true.
That's going to be tragic.
That'll be the new problem.
Yeah. So what I was going to say, to go back to my original point about Harry being a tragic figure, again, he is straight out of Shakespeare as a tragic character.
Mm-hmm.
And he has effectively, either directly or indirectly, has sabotaged everything that he had. There are a lot of comments in the Megxit community about a potential financial problem at Montecito.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are saying that one of the reasons that Meghan is rowing her boat so fast and with so much vigor in terms of American Riviera Orchard, which apparently she never wanted in the first place, and that's why as she has recently said. But and in terms of as ever, why she is so furiously rowing. A lot of people have said that they think there's a financial problem there. It's not so much that she wants to be a billionaire, which I'm sure she wouldn't mind. I mean, who would? But at the same time, a lot of people are saying, where's this money? They've got to have a huge cash flow to maintain that operation. And a lot of people are speculating, as people do, and it could be right, could be wrong, who knows. A lot of people are speculating that they've got a really high burn rate on their bank account, and that might be a problem. So all this inheritance that Harry has, and all this money that he took in from Netflix and from writing Spare and so forth, who knows how long that's going to last. So that might be weighing on him as well. And people talk about the fact that, I think he said in Spare, his best friend is one of his security guards.
Yeah. Not a great sign. Yeah.
No, it's really not. It's really not.
On your point of Harry's lost everything that was endearing about him, I just had made some notes, and my thoughts were this: it's the charity. He's gone from more of a I think a lot is owed to the royal family and the courtiers that looked out for him. He's gone from charity to self-promotion. We keep seeing that a lot, from almost like a charm about him that now I'm not sure was even there, but it's gone from charm to cringe. I can't with that dude. I sometimes at the beginning I felt sorry for him, but I think he's in a hell of his own making, and I think those two deserved each other. So I'm just going to leave that at that. But I think your point stands about he's lost everything that was endearing about him. Is that Meghan's fault? No, I don't like when people just blame her. I think a lot of this was in him. It just was the perfect storm to bring it out of him. So that was my thought on that.
Yeah, and I'll just mention, someone said to me one time, I expressed some frustration about something, and it was something relatively unimportant in the grand scheme of the world. And I said, I'm irritated about this, and I'm disappointed, and it's something happened, and it's going to take several months before it gets resolved. And the plans that I was about to execute 2 weeks from now are not going to have to wait for multiple months. And I said, it just frustrates me. And I commented and I said, I realize that sounds really petty and silly. And the person said, very wisely, I think, whatever upset it, don't beat yourself up because it's not a legitimate source of frustration. Your source of frustration is your source of frustration. And if something has bothered you, don't diminish that and don't try and minimize that. And the relevance of that is to Harry. I think he has some grievances about the universe. The world has dealt him a bad hand. And it's very easy for people to say, stop talking about your prematurely deceased mother, who you clearly loved and who clearly loved you. It's very easy for people to say, get over it. And the fact that he has not gotten over it, as evidenced by the fact that he constantly talks about her, it is an indication that he has some underlying grievances and frustrations that just will not go away. And that's okay. That's okay. The problem that he has is the extent to which he talks about them all the time, and he marinates about them, and he keeps banging the drum about them. I think I've told you, Jen, I have a friend who was going through a rough part of her life, and she lived in the Southwest United States. And she would call me once in a while, and I would say, hey, how are you doing? And how are things going? And she would say, I mean, literally, this is like back when long distance, you had to pay separately for long distance. And I would say, hey, how are things going? And she'd be like, oh, well, not so good. And I would just think, I can't believe, look, I'm here to support you, and I'm here to listen to you and to hear you and everything else. But I can't believe you're calling me long distance, and the first words out of your mouth are, things are not so good. And I kind of think that's the way Harry is some of the time. It's like, listen, nobody begrudges you. Nobody, is upset about what happened to you. You have everyone's sympathy, and that's a good and natural thing. But at the same time, there's only so much that people can listen to it before they start to, do one of those and say, I can't take this anymore. And he doesn't understand that, I don't think.
I think you're right.
And to your point, Jen, the courtiers, his handlers at the palace would have pointed that out to him.
Yeah. You would think, but I don't know that he'll listen to them. But yeah, it sounds like they did. According to the book Courtiers that I read, they did point it out to him. But yeah, he was like,
yes, exactly.
But I was just going to make the point that so many of us have lost people. It doesn't give you a free pass to be an a-hole the rest of your life, like we've seen Harry.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And again, it's back to the whole thing that we were talking about a few minutes ago about growing up in such a screwy environment. He got the worst of both worlds. He was brought up in an environment where his entire life was managed with the expectation that he was being, I know groomed is not a popular word in some contexts, but he was being groomed for a position as a member of the royal family. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden that came to a grinding halt. So he's a fish out of water in the worst way. And we see that on a regular basis. That's and true. Therein lies the tragedy. And he's a human being. He deserves the same chance that everybody else gets, and I get that. But at the same time, and he's pitiful. It's a tremendous loss. As we've talked about before, he has a wonderful gift for working with children. He could have been an ambassador to, the UK youth or preschool learning or what Head Start kind of a thing. I don't know what they have in the UK. He would have been fantastic at something like that, and his talents are being wasted.
Yeah, that's true. And then another thought that you had that I really liked, I had to write it down, was you said Meghan is lazy, but she's driven by greed. And very much look at me. Harry is lazy, and he's driven by paranoia / a victim complex. I don't know. Yeah. Do you have more to add to that, or just that's it?
Well, I mean, I'm not the first person that has, and I'm not sure you said exactly what I said, but I think there's some truth to that, and I think the best evidence of that is the Spotify comment about these people. They really don't have their heart in whatever they're doing. They have some motivations, but their motivations are not things along the lines of, I want to start a company, and regardless of what you think about Bill Gates, he's donated a boatload of money to good causes, malaria prevention and all that stuff. That does not seem to be what Meghan's motivation is. Meghan's motivation, in my opinion, is that she wants to be in the cool girls club. She wants to be in the Blue Origin passengers club, where they're very high profile. They're always on the runway. They're always in Us Weekly or in People or on the cover of Time magazine or whatever it is. She wants very much to be noticed. And I think that is and she wants to be validated. Again, my opinion is that she's probably a person who's very uncomfortable in her own skin, with or without a spray tan, which she may or may not have. And she wants desperately to be accepted, and she believes that the way to be accepted is to get herself into this billionaire club of entrepreneurs, as evidenced by what's the name of her current podcast? Oh, Female Confessions of a Female Founder. She wants to be a female founder. Mm-hmm. That's, by the way, just as an aside, I think that title has as much to do with Meghan as it does to do with the guests. Uh-huh. You would think, oh, that's interesting. She's going to go out and find a bunch of female founders who've done cool stuff, founding an enterprise of some sort, and then she's going to extract all the wisdom that they've accumulated and get some good stories out of them. Mm-hmm. I think female founder is as much as anything applied to her.
Yeah. She
wants to talk about her own experiences, as we've seen. Oh my gosh, she just talked about that in New York. Oh my gosh, I've had to work so hard. It's, I'm juggling this, that. You know what? Somebody said to me the other day, and it's true. I mean, I can sympathize, empathize, whatever, eyes with this. There are people who have never worked less than a 10-hour day in their entire life. I've had that experience, 10 hours and worse. Mm-hmm. And you know what caught my ear too is that when she talked about, oh, Harry and I, we always make time for lunch every day. And yet we like to sit across the table and chit chat and have lunch every day.
Uh-huh.
To me, that's an indication of a lack of seriousness of purpose.
Yeah,
If she's
absolutely.
that's just my opinion, my viewpoint on it, my take. But I mean, I've worked some jobs where, you're at your desk working, not getting coffee, not finding the newspaper, any of that stuff. You are head down, keyboard going, telephone ringing at 8 a.m. The break that you take in the day is 15 minutes at lunchtime to stretch your legs, walk down to the cafeteria, go out to whatever the local sandwich shop is, get yourself something to eat, come back, eat it at your desk as you continue to work. And then, if everything has gone right during the day, at 6 o'clock, you start to pack up.
Right.
I think that's a very foreign concept to Meghan and especially to Harry. That would be my guess.
I think so too.
I mean, and you all you have to do also is what was the 990? How many hours a week do you devote to this enterprise?
Right.
1. Come on.
There's a
Come on.
reason that Spotify guy called them lazy blinking grifters. So just saying. I don't
Yeah.
think you
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, again, to talk about Meghan in a tragic way, given her motivation and her energy and enthusiasm and her passion that she pours into things, it's a shame that it seems to be directed into endeavors that, the word flop is used over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think so too. Rightly so, it sounds like. Let's see. The next point that we were talking about, you kind of touched on, and I just wanted to go back, and that was your thoughts on her changing the logic about, or changing her narrative about American Riviera Orchard.
Oh, yeah.
And she initially embraced it, but then now called it a word salad.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious to hear her use the word salad, because it's like, hello, no self-awareness. How are you? What are your thoughts? Any other thoughts on that? I mean,
I think it's kind of a watershed for people who are looking for evidence of Meghan being different, telling people who are looking for things to latch on to figure out who Meghan is. I think that's kind of that's a watershed or a keystone moment. For her to say, after spending, by the way, I have no idea what her legal fees were for trying to get American Riviera Orchard. I would bet it's well into 6 figures.
Woo.
She has a very prestigious law firm that's well versed in intellectual property work that she's enlisted to help. Her lawyer, Marjorie something, I think. I can't remember her name. I've looked at her CV. She looks very, very well equipped, very competent. I'm sure she's very bright. But she's probably banging her head against the wall.
I'm sure.
After all the American Riviera Orchard business, and then at the end of the process, oops, we've changed our mind for whatever reason. For Meghan to say, "Oh, I never really liked American Riviera Orchard all along," and in fact, you go back to 2022, I think is the date. I had started the process on As Ever, and I think what she said the other day was that I kept it under wraps because I didn't want people snooping around and finding it. And
that's right.
And she's jumped through a lot of hoops. She's put a lot. It's I won't say it's easy. It's possible at this stage to reverse engineer the steps that she took to keep people from snooping around. She she registered an LLC, a limited liability company, but I believe it's called 2022 Trademarks LLC. And she used that to apply for the As Ever trademark. The interesting thing is that if you go back and look at the registered address for 2022 Trademarks LLC, the address of that organization is, I forget, it's on Avenue of the Stars in Los Angeles. It happens to be the office of her lawyer.
Oh, yeah.
So she used her lawyer's office. Again, I think I'm getting this right.
Sure.
She registered basically a shell company. She created a shell company to hide what was going on with As Ever. And the shell company is even somewhat camouflaged by being registered at her lawyer's office instead of at Meghan and Harry's office, or where Archwell is, which I think is on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. So she clearly went through a lot of hoops.
She did.
And it's odd that in spite of all of the steps that she took to try and keep As Ever under wraps, then she went forward and tried to do American Riviera Orchard. It's just, people talk about the chaos of trying to work with Meghan and the frustrations and heartaches of trying to work with Meghan. I think that that's a little bit emblematic of the type of difficulty, because it's really, it also kind of speaks to paranoia. Why would you care if people have figured out that Meghan has a trademark pending called As Ever? By the way, she said something else interesting the other day that made me kind of question her business savvy. She said, we protected As Ever, or I protected As Ever back in 2022. That's kind of a half-truth. That's kind of a stretch. Protecting, she registered As Ever as a limited liability company in Delaware, I believe. I'm pretty sure I'm getting this right. More recently, I think, in fact, just last month, she cross-registered As Ever in the state of California. So the relevance of that is that no one else can come along and register As Ever limited liability company in Delaware. And now, because of what she did last month, I believe it, or maybe it was in March, that would be last month, nobody can come along and register As Ever in the state of California.
Okay.
However, you can register As Ever in Florida, Jen.
Oh, great. Okay, perfect.
I can register it in Washington, D.C. if I want.
Perfect.
Somebody can register it in Wisconsin or Oklahoma or wherever they want. There's there's 48 other states that somebody can register As Ever. As far as the trademark protection for As Ever, that has not gone through yet. It's pending. It's live in the U.S. I just looked the other day. It's live in the trademark office, but it's still pending.
Yeah.
So until that goes through, she does not have truly effective trademark protection for As Ever. And by the way, it may not go through. She's already run into, as we know, with the clothing store in New York, there is an As Ever without a space in it, where it's As Ever, all one word. And the trademark office has already called that out and say, there's a substantial likelihood of confusion here because of this other As Ever, all one word, and then also because of the fact that there are overlapping goods and services that are likely, that you've asked to have, they call it a classification. There are overlapping classifications. By the way, just an interesting side note, as far as that's concerned, because people have asked me about this, you can have competing brands under the same name. The common example that always gets tossed around is Cadillac. There is obviously Cadillac motor cars made by General Motors. There's also Cadillac dog food. Is there any likelihood of confusion about Cadillac cars and SUVs and Cadillac dog food? No. And that's why they both have a registered trademark in the United States. Nobody's going to think, oh, I bought Cadillac dog food and I didn't like it. I'm going to sue General Motors.
I need
Or
Escalade.
my car is a piece of junk. I'm going to sue Cadillac dog food. No one is confused about that kind of thing. But in the case of as ever, if you're talking about an overlapping classification of goods and services, then there's a problem. And because, like I said, the trademark office said already, you need to fix this problem, or you're not going to get trademark protection in this class of goods. So it's going to be very interesting. It still has not reached the finish line yet. I'm sure she'll get some protection of some sort, but for her to stand up or wherever she was and say, oh, we protected this back in 2022. Not really. You started the process. You started the process, but you're still, kind of out there flapping in the breeze. And of course, the risk that you run when you do that is if the trademark office turns around and says, you know what, we're going to toss the whole thing out. Well, guess what? All of this lead up, all your website, as ever official, whatever it is, that can all go down the drain. Mm-hmm. If the trademark office, or if as happened with Harry and David, if somebody pops up and says, you know what, we have a real problem with this, and we're going to raise an objection. I mean, the whole thing could still. I don't think that's likely to happen, but it's out there. It's a possibility. Yeah, so sure. She's taken a risk. There's no doubt about that. Definitely a risk.
It's almost like launching a company out of spite is a really bad idea.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
And then going out and announcing it immediately, really bad idea.
Right. And what was the rationale? Because she heard through the grapevine that there was going to be somebody was going to beat her to the punch in the media. And so isn't that the way ARO got started? Was that somehow she had to ramp up very quickly?
Because Prince William was accepting an award for Diana, and she wanted to get her news out there.
Yeah.
Something about it may not have been an award for Diana, but something with Diana, and she wanted to get her news out there quicker. So she just
right. And
then a year and a half later decided, never mind.
Yeah. Oh, and I never intended that all along.
That's right. Oh, and then I think it was the podcast I've listened to so much lately, like cross wires my brain. But in the podcast, I think it was a podcast. She said something like, I always meant for it to be more of an umbrella and to have these verticals underneath it. You did what?
Oh, now? Yeah. Well, and that's, that's, that touches on another thing I know we were going to discuss. There's some hilarious videos on the internet of people using business lingo to the max. When I was getting my MBA, there used to be a game that people would literally play in class with a piece of paper, and it was called Bullshit Bingo. Oh. And the point of it was that whenever somebody dropped some business term that was kind of misplaced, or it was just like you're clearly trying to show off by using business buzzwords. And then, you'd literally see people. It was actually really funny in class. You would see people, somebody would say something, and you'd see people like scramble around for their bingo card and put a check mark on their bingo card. Anyway, when Meghan talks about verticals, and what was the comment that she made the other day about my next tranche of SKUs?
Oh, that's what I knew. There was another one I meant to bring. Yes, I'd taken a photo of that and I forgot it. But yes,
for people who don't know, tranche is a French word. It means slice. Mm-hmm. A tranche de pain is a slice of bread. A SKU, for people who don't know, is an is that the right word? Acronym? It's like NASA. A SKU is SKU, Stock Keeping Unit. Mm-hmm. If you go into a big box store like Home Depot or TJ Maxx, or what is it in the UK? Is it TF Maxx?
TK Maxx.
TK Maxx, thank you. Mm-hmm. Important to
Yes.
Suppress the comments. No, it's TK Maxx. What's he talking about? Not TF
No,
Maxx.
leave me comments. Leave me comments. Tell us.
Okay. Yes. Right. Go ahead. Correct. No, those stores, every item that you have has a SKU, a stock keeping unit.
Right.
For Meghan, with her, how many products does she have? 8?
Yeah.
10? I know she anticipates, if you look at the trademark filing, she anticipates having hundreds.
Right.
But at this stage of the game, for her to talk about, well, when my next tranche of SKUs drops, anybody who's in business or who has been in business or knows anything about business hears that. You talk about people rolling their eyes, Jen. It's just that would cause people to scramble for their bingo card in an MBA program. So she's let a couple of other ones drop as well. You know, these overused business terms, and it's kind of like she's got just enough. The impression that it leaves is that she's got just enough business knowledge to be dangerous. She's trying to impress people. She's trying to sound very savvy and into what she's doing. But, you know, when you talk about my verticals means, for instance, Ford Motor Company has a plant in Michigan called the Rouge facility, the River Rouge plant. It's right in Detroit. And it was, for a long time, it was considered to be very vertically integrated. And what they mean by that is that at that facility, they not only make cars and trucks, but they make windshields, they make air conditioning systems, they make doors, et cetera, et cetera. And so they call that very vertically integrated, meaning that there's a whole stream of products that lead into a bigger product. So when Meghan talks about her verticals that are forthcoming, what she's trying to say as well, when I launch my tranche of childcare, baby care products, then that's going to include bibs and onesies and bottles and, you know, feeding, nursing bottles and all this other stuff. So that's what she's trying to talk about. But it's so premature and it's so misplaced. And it's clearly such an effort. It's so painfully an effort to show off and impress that it just makes you think, oh my goodness, why can't you just talk like a normal person? Because she doesn't do it. Again, we're talking about the tragedy of Meghan. She's her own worst enemy. It's sad when she doesn't know any better. And again, if she had any advisors that were delivering messages that were really resonating and sinking in with her, she would figure that out. She'd get the message, but it's just not in the cards for her.
No,
she does not realize it's kind of like an analog to her clothing. She does not she thinks she's very fancy and she's doing things to impress, and it's just not working out that way.
I think it's a continuing theme of no substance there. So there's going to be, it's the dried flowers all over again with everything she does. Just something to talk about, but nothing there. So she's talking about hundreds of products, but can't keep the 8 in stock or replenish. And now there's talks, allegations of, what's going on with refunds, all kinds of mess. You'd think you need to get your first 8 products right before you plan your next 800.
Yeah. Well, I know we've talked about this before, but it reminds me so much of The Silence of the Lambs, the movie with Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. And you think back about the first time that Clarice Starling, played by Jodie Foster, who's the FBI agent, the first time she meets Hannibal Lecter, as played by Anthony Hopkins, and they're standing there having a conversation through the wall of this jail cell. And Anthony Hopkins, who's clearly very bright but very troubled, he looks at Clarice Starling and he says, "You know what you look like to me? You look like a rube," which is an unflattering term, basically to say somebody from the country that's not terribly sophisticated. and he talks about the fact, and he he's a medical doctor by training, and he said, good nutrition has given you some length of bone, but you're not more than one generation from poor trailer trash, or something to that extent. And he talks about, you've got your fancy purse, but you're wearing cheap shoes. And not that Meghan wears cheap shoes, but you get the point. It's kind of like she's trying so hard to get away from who she kind of realizes that she might be at her core, but she's just not able to finish the task. She makes a brave noise trying to get to the finish line in terms of being sophisticated and in her thought and appearance and everything like that, but she only really gets 80 or 85% of the way there. And I think that's at the heart of why people are talking about, well, where are all these A-listers on her podcast? You want to talk about a female founder? Why don't you get Gwyneth Paltrow on there? Why don't you get Reese Witherspoon on there? These are women that have done exactly what you are aspiring to do, and yet they don't want to talk to you.
Yeah,
why
Jessica
is that?
Alba comes to mind. She has that $1 billion honest company. Sure, why not? Yeah,
right. And people are speculating that part of the reason is that they're seeing through Meghan, and they're saying, she's just not the real deal in the way that we were the real deal. And there's a whole other conversation, and I don't know if it's on your list or not, but there's a whole other conversation to be had about. It goes back to the whole business we've talked about before about know, like, trust. And know, like, trust, and then another level up would be actually buy something. And Meghan is still stuck in the like stage, to say nothing about people going up to the trust stage and the buy stage. And that's what those other women have done. Those other very successful female founders have done. And I think that's part of the reason why they're looking at Meghan and they're saying, she wants very badly to be in the club, but she doesn't have the right stuff.
But even if she was able to snag a guest like that, it would be lost. I would want to hear what whoever had to say about how they were successful, and you'd never get to hear it. It would be like, did you know that when I was 11 years old, I wrote a soap company? It's like, shut up.
Yeah. Well, we had a conversation the other day, and I'm going to sound like a hypocrite here because when I've come on your show, Jen, you ask me questions and I answer your question by talking about 5 times longer, taking up 5 times more. You ask me a 1-minute question, I give you a 5-minute answer. And you can feel free to cut me off at any time. But by contrast to Meghan's interviewing style, she asks a question and it seems like it's almost designed to elicit an answer to which she can immediately respond with her own story.
1,000,000%. Yep.
And that's what makes her content, people are talking about, it's not only boring, I'm not learning anything, and it's tedious. You want to bang your head against the wall because you're not hearing anything from the person that you really tuned in to hear.
Right.
And there's a well-known interviewing technique, and I know it's used. It's used to build rapport in, say, like, just as an example, CIA, for instance. You ask one question to the person that you're talking to, and they respond. You ask a follow-up question, and they respond. And then you respond with, oh, isn't that interesting? You know what? I'm actually familiar with that thing that you just were talking about because, there was a time when I was sort of in that same situation and I was trying to figure things out. But let me ask you something else about that. Mm-hmm. And they respond. And then you ask another question and you allow the person to respond. And then, again, you can step in and validate. It's by the way, when the original questioner actually jumps in and responds, it's important that that person validates what the guest has just said.
Sure.
Because otherwise, it doesn't build a rapport with the guest. And the guest, ultimately, what you're trying to do is get the guest to open up and to be more comfortable and to become more revealing. And that's when the interview gets and the conversation gets very interesting. Not only for the host, but also obviously for the audience and for the guest. If the guest is not having a good time, I don't get the sense that Meghan's guests on her podcast are really having a good time. I think they're there because they've agreed to be there and they're asked questions and they want to seem like they are, polite and being cordial and everything else. But at the same time, it's kind of like, you kind of wonder, are they looking at their watch? Are they trying to figure out, how much longer is this going to go on? And again, you get the sense of what is it that the people are thinking about? Why isn't she any more interested in what I have to say? It's always turned around to something about Meghan. Invariably.
I think it's the same as the Netflix show. She only has on people that will kiss her A. So they have to be very specific criteria. She likes people that will come on and just let it circle back to her. So I think it's a certain type of personality she looks for.
Well, right. And the other thing about the highbrow hippie woman that was just on, whose name I can't remember.
Katie Lee.
Yeah. I don't recall that Meghan ever mentioned that she was an investor or she is an investor in highbrow hippie.
Yeah, she did.
To me, that's that. I think that's. I have a problem with that.
It's a lack of integrity. Yeah, sure.
If you want to call it that, but it's just, and in a way, a benefit would accrue to Meghan if she actually came forward with that, and everybody might say, "Oh my gosh, Meghan's given this woman some money. I'm going to find out more about this." If you're a Meghan fan, this must be good stuff. If I'm in California, I'm going to check this place out. I'm going to order some of their products. I think they have products on the web. I'm going to, if Meghan put her money where her mouth is on this, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to give it a shot. I would think that would be an opportunity for Meghan. But as far as I'm aware, she did not say anything about her investment.
Unfortunately, I listened to the episode and I don't recall her making any kind of statement or any kind of even alluded to that she was an investor. She said that she uses her services, but she didn't say about being an investor.
Yes.
Yeah.
And who knows? I recall reading that she was actually an investor. This is not just conjecture. We could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that Meghan has put some money into that business.
I believe you're correct on that. Oh my goodness gracious. That podcast is such a disaster. Again, I go back to, you could have the best guest in the world, and with her as a host, you're just not going to save it. And I'm really not trying. I've said before, I'm very honest. If I felt like she was doing something right, I would say it. I will say in the Katie Lee interview, she did a little better job of asking questions. The first 2 episodes, she didn't even ask questions. It was just me. And then, like, with this one, at least she'd say me. How does that make you feel? Me.
Yeah.
But,
right.
But John, I do have a bone to pick with you. You haven't talked about me enough in this interview. Come on.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey, it's your channel. Knock yourself out, Jen.
No, you're way more interesting. Go. What you got?
Oh, thank you.
No, I was going to make a joke because you said something about Meghan and revealing. I'm like, well, John, you did come on my show showing what is this part called right here? Here you were showing this.
Your forearm, yes.
Forearms, that's right. So you're very revealing.
Reveal that'll be a new, instead of revealing the narc, somebody can start a channel revealing the forearm.
That's right. I'm working with her soon, so I'll be sure to mention that. That's right.
She's great. Excited. She is great.
I can't wait to hear her talk about me. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right.
That's not the one you want talking about you. Oh my goodness. If she's revealing narcissist, no thanks.
Right.
Let's see here. I'm going back to our questions here. So another thing, if you don't mind, I'd like to talk about just again an interesting point you had brought up is Meghan and the hugging. So something you had said is it's a seems to be, in our opinion, like a psychological tactic. You want to talk about that, because we both find it so jarring the way she hugs people and takes over with it. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's so interesting on so many levels. We just came out of, or not just, but we were within our recent memory, we were in a worldwide situation where everybody had to wear a mask and be very, very careful about
everything. Yeah.
Everything. And I don't want to say the name of it, otherwise there'll be a giant billboard. Yeah, right, across the top of your message, across the top of a message across the top of your screen. But a lot of people are still very cautious about those types of things. They've been very sensitized. I think the more important question, though, is what is being accomplished by these giant full body hugs. Oh, those are just, we're such affectionate people and we love other people and we, just love to make everybody feel welcome and embrace them and everything. Okay, that's one opinion. Another opinion might be it's a psych operation. It's a psych out. People have a sense of personal space.
Yeah.
People are very sensitized to their personal space. We've all met people and been around people who, for whatever reason, don't have a good concept of or grasp of what appropriate personal space is. For most people, it's organic. They get it. When you're standing talking to somebody in a bar or wherever it is, you have a certain distance. And it's actually a cultural thing as well. Some cultures stand farther apart. Some cultures stand closer together. It just depends. Anyway, to give somebody a full-bodied hug that may not want it, I think a lot of people might argue that that is a tactic to put someone back on their heels.
Yeah.
And to dominate them. Because if you're the person who's receiving the hug, you don't want to seem unfriendly and not allow the hug or not reciprocate the hug. That would be very odd. So all of a sudden, you have this psychological advantage over the person. It's like, I know, Jen, you and I have talked about the movie Spy Game, which we both like, and there's a scene in the elevator where Robert Redford's character is trying to put another character that he doesn't like, put that person back on their heels, and they're in the elevator, and Robert Redford looks at the guy and he goes, "You got something in your teeth." And all of a sudden, the guy just subtly freaks out. He's looking around. Where's a shiny panel on the wall of the elevator that I can pick in my teeth and get this piece out of? It's a psych hack. It really is. And I think the same thing is true about when Meghan, in particular, I think Harry does full body hugs because Meghan probably encourages him to. But I think Meghan does that to people to turn it into a psych hack and to make people feel awkward and uncomfortable. And then there's an opportunity to extract something from the person.
I think
that's just my thought on that. It just occurred to me. Oh, we're huggers. We love everybody. Okay, fine. Maybe that's true. But if a person is not uncomfortable with a hug, why, if you love, I mean, there's an irony here. If you're so intent on making everybody else feel so warm and welcome and so forth, I'm going to give you a big hug. Well, very substantial possibility that that's going to backfire in a big way.
Absolutely. I think so. I think it's her. It's exactly what you're saying with the psychology behind it, which fascinates me. But I think also we go back to appearance. It appears warm if you don't know better. It appears outwardly warm, but then it's a psychological tactic. She's asserting dominance. It puts them, like you say, back on their heels. And I think it's just the almost the shock of it. Because what are you gonna like say? Don't hug me. You're probably
Right.
gonna be
You
polite.
don't want to be rude. You don't want to be rude.
But
I
if
mean,
I
there was
don't
a
know the person, it's gonna throw me, and I'm just the whole time I'm be like, that was weird.
well, and there was a famous episode when the late Queen was in the United States, and I don't know where she was, but she went into I think she went into somebody's home,
Mhm.
and this person who didn't come across as terribly sophisticated, when she met the Queen, instead of doing the normal things that you do or do not do when you meet the Queen, this woman went over and she gave the Queen a big hug. And people just cringed and said, this unsophisticated, moronic, stupid American.
Mhm.
Apparently, she had been told what to do when the Queen came into her presence. And she said, I don't care. I hug everybody.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. But, and you could even, there are pictures of it. I'm sure you can Google it. The pictures, and the Queen is kind of like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not hugged.
Yeah.
You don't hug me, dear. But it's just an interesting little side note about
It is.
people's interpersonal relationships. Jen, the other thing we talked about in that regard is, I know HG talks a lot about Meghan, what he calls her rictus grin. I've heard other people use the term rictus grin as well. Not terribly flattering, but
not
you
wrong.
and I were talking about, if you meet someone, let's say you're in a receiving line, or let's say you're introduced to someone, and you meet that person, but you know nothing about them. There's a certain type of friendly grin and smile that you put on your face. Oh, yeah. Hey, really nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you meet the person and you say something like, as the conversation develops, oh, how do you, what's your connection here? Oh, I'm so-and-so's brother or sister. Oh, you're kidding. You know so-and-so. And then all of a sudden, both people break out in this huge smile. The huge smile, after you've made a little bit of a connection, it seems, in my observation, that seems to be where Meghan starts.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the rictus grin. And her smile never really, she starts out at a 10. Because it's a performative smile, it seems like. And then she has no place else to go. And if you meet somebody that starts out with a 10 smile instead of a 5 smile,
right,
again, that sets people's, antenna, quivering. Right. It's like, this is insincere. I don't have a good feeling about this. This person wants something. They're trying to ingratiate. They're trying to make me like them or whatever. I think that's actually one of the disadvantages of Meghan's background in acting, such as it is that she is able to put on a smile that is a kind of $1 million smile. She has a nice smile. There's no question about that. The problem for her is that it's inorganic. It does not come naturally in a lot of cases. And even you don't have to be trained. You don't have to be one of these so-called body language experts, any of that stuff. It's just you have to be tuned into the relationship back and forth between two people. And if there's an inorganic element to it, all of a sudden, again, not on a conscious level, but on some level, it makes you think, not sure what to think about this.
Okay, so I cannot for the life of me remember the exact context, but you and I had an interesting conversation as well about, I think it was something along the lines about how we both kind of felt like she's using Harry now, my husband, not Harry, she'd never call him that. She was using H to to compliment her. To me, a big example of that was in the Netflix show. The only time we saw him was for just a minute. They turned down the loud music just to hear him say something like, "I'm very proud of her." I don't know what he said, something along those lines. And then you had brought up something interesting about, can you talk about understated versus overstated and your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is just a random thought, but again, the word performative is becoming so overused, I think, in the context of Meghan and Harry, but
it fits. I mean,
it does kind of fit. And the thing that like when they pay each other compliments, there's this long, sort of sappy, overly syrupy kind of drawn out, all these superlatives, and oh, he's the most loving husband, and he's so talented, and she's so patient, and all this kind of stuff. And I was just reminded of, I think it's the original Batman movie with Michael Keaton, and he's talking about his girlfriend, Vicky Vale. Thank you. Played by
Kim Basinger.
Thank you. You look like Kim Basinger. That's the other, besides Jerry Hall, there's Kim Basinger. You've got some Kim Basinger going.
Oh my God, I'll take it. That's a huge compliment. Thank you.
Put it in the comments.
Okay.
I'll do a Trevor.
You look like Kim Basinger. She's from Georgia, right? I'm from Florida. There you go.
Okay, close. You might be related. You might be related. I'll do a Trevor. Put it in the comments.
But thank you for the compliment. That's incredible. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome. So anyway, somebody says something to Bruce Wayne about his girlfriend, Vicky Vale. And it's this very over the top, oh, she's this, she's that, she's the other, she's bright, she's beautiful, on and on and on. And Michael Keaton / Bruce Wayne just goes, yeah, she's great, isn't she? And it's this it's the quiet confidence. It's the understated. It's like, yeah, I hear you. You're exactly right. And yeah, she's great, isn't she? And that's all you have to say. And it's so authentic and so sincere. And like I said, when I heard these over the top superlatives, and he's the most wonderful, magical, kind, on and on and on and on and on. And it's like, if you really wanted to say everything, again, it's talks most, says least, kind of, as we were talking about before. All you got to do is just say that. And there used to be a somebody, again, put it in the comments if you know, there used to be a TV ad by sort of an elder statesman of the Hollywood community, and the tagline of the comment was, confidence is very sexy, don't you think? And it's totally true. Men and women, if you have confidence, and if you seem to have confidence, and you have this air of confidence around you, then you don't have to say 100 words when 5 will do. Yeah, she is. Yeah, she's great, isn't she? That's all it takes.
And that suggests a more real bond with somebody, because
absolutely,
you're not selling it. It's just, I know I'm with her every day. I know, I'm aware, something like that, or I just know these things. Yeah.
Yes. So I think that, again, that's part of the subtle, dislikable, unlikable quality of Meghan in particular. I think if she would stop doing that, she'd do herself a great favor, and just, gosh, she struggles so hard to be real. And that is by far her biggest flaw, is that she doesn't come across as real. And when you hear things,
I think it's the less real she.
Yes, and when you hear about the real Meghan, invariably it's negative. She's a dictator in heels. That's the comment. She's a bully. She's this. All of these, nobody ever has a truly heartfelt, kind narrative to share about her. And the same thing to a certain extent is true of Harry. He's got a temper. He's easily upset about things. He's not thoughtful. Just all of these things that. And again, I was going to make this point before when you're talking about. I think there's the picture of them getting out of the car in New York on this most recent trip, the Time 100 trip, or the bed. Who was it that called it the bedtime 100 trip?
Oh, I think it was Lean Mean Machine. Yeah.
That was hilarious.
Yes.
Credit where it's due. That was really funny. Anyway, no, it's not that picture there. It's right as they're getting out of the car. Oh, by the way, since we're on the one you just showed there, the guy in the gray jacket, and everybody's jumping on this, holding his arms up. Crowd, stay back. Stay back.
Right. So that was the end of the first part of our sit down. There's a whole other part that we really go into more Harry and Meghan stuff, and I'm so excited for you to watch it. Can I just say, isn't John wonderful? He really is. Don't tell him I said that. He's so much fun to record with. I really enjoy working with him. He really is a pleasure to talk to. And John, if you're watching, thank you for your time and your just your answers and your thoughtfulness on all of it. It really means the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Do make sure you follow him on Instagram. He is Witherspoon DC on Instagram, so definitely give him that follow. Encourage him to start up his channel, and I will forward him any of the comments that you have like that. But he truly is great, and I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I can't wait for you to see part 2 that should be up tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for watching and for all your love and support. You mean the whole wide world to me. You really do. Thank you for everything, and I can't wait to bring you more stuff like this. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.